do we have a fascinating topic to unpack. In today's Explainer, we're diving deep into relationship dynamics, but we're doing it specifically through the lens of behavioral science. We're talking about the psychological triggers of male commitment. Now, instead of relying on that same old generic dating advice or just guessing, we are going to break down exactly how a man's brain subconsciously evaluates relationships. We'll track that entire journey, straight from basic attraction all the way to long-term investment. Let's be real, this is a scenario that plays out all the time. You might literally be asking yourself right now, why do incredible, intelligent, emotionally aware women constantly get overlooked or just trapped in this endless loop of mixed signals, right? Well, if you've ever felt the absolute frustration of a one-sided relationship where everything seems totally great, but a decisive commitment just never happens, listen, you are not alone. Today, we're applying a clinical, scientific lens to this exact dynamic. We're going to explain the neurological filters at play so you can finally understand the exact science behind those frustrating mixed signals. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's paradigm shift in understanding male psychology. First, we'll start with the commitment dilemma. Then we'll walk through the 4 specific psychological filters a connection must pass through: the threat of loss, the future self, the amygdala's role, and finally, the power of detachment. All right, let's start with section 1, the commitment dilemma, and the 3 categories of women. So right from the very beginning, long before any conscious choices are even made, a man's brain subconsciously categorizes women into 3 distinct tiers. At the top, you've got the taken for granted category. Basically, this means automatic access and zero boundaries. Then, way down at the bottom is the dream woman tier. This is characterized by high value, conditional access, and inspiring his future growth. But look at that middle tier, the good enough category. This is exactly where the vast majority of absolutely incredible women get trapped. It's that zone where you get chemistry, you get his attention, but you just do not get decisive commitment. Now, before we go any further, I want to make something crystal clear. If you find yourself stuck in that good enough category, it is absolutely not a reflection of your innate value. It's not about your beauty or your intelligence or trying to be perfectly flawless. Getting stuck here is literally just a matter of unrecognized psychological triggers. See, a man doesn't choose a partner based solely on how much he feels for her. His brain is actually running a continuous background calculation on long-term investment. Let's move to and see how this builds across 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is attraction. Honestly, that's the easy part. That's just chemistry. But step 3, selection, that doesn't just happen automatically. To get all the way from attraction to selection, the connection must pass through step 2, evaluation. And this evaluation process consists of 4 very specific neurological filters. If you don't understand these filters, you can be the most incredible person in the room and still get overlooked. Which brings us to filter 1, the threat of loss, also known as loss aversion. There's this massive myth out there that providing unlimited loyalty and support will just automatically guarantee commitment. But clinically speaking, I want you to consider this quote. A man does not commit because he feels wanted. He commits when he feels that he could lose something valuable. In behavioral science, we call this loss aversion. It's the psychological principle that human beings are far more motivated by the threat of losing something than they are by the prospect of gaining something new. If his brain senses that you'll just accept inconsistent effort and wait around indefinitely, that neurological urgency to secure the relationship simply shuts off. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between playing silly games and having actual mature boundaries. We're talking about automatic access versus conditional access. Think of it like a Netflix subscription. You love the shows, you use it every single day, but if you stop paying your bill, what happens? You lose access entirely. Netflix doesn't chase you down or offer you free movies to beg you to stay, right? No payment, no subscription. When your presence in someone's life is conditional upon alignment, mutual effort, and real standards, his commitment circuits naturally activate. Why? Because staying complacent suddenly has a very real cost. Moving right along, we have filter 2, the future self, and identity-based attraction. You see, commitment is deeply tied to a man's identity and his internal status. Attraction isn't just a chemical reaction. We're all naturally drawn to relationships and environments that reinforce who we believe we are, or better yet, who we want to become. For men in particular, the brain is incredibly responsive to status elevation cues. Notice these specific traits: competence, direction, respect, capability, growth, and discipline. If a woman's presence naturally reinforces this higher, more disciplined leader version of a man, his brain directly associates her with growth. And neurologically speaking, growth is incredibly attractive.
When commitment aligns with his ideal identity, it stops feeling like some huge sacrifice and just becomes the most logical choice to make. But actually, scratch that. We need to look at the other side of the equation here first. You simply cannot inspire a future that he does not want. Responsibility definitely goes both ways here. If you're out there encouraging stability and leadership, you've got to choose a man whose core values already align with those traits. I mean, if he doesn't inherently value growth or discipline, there is no psychological dynamic you can create that's going to magically manufacture it for him. Your presence either amplifies the man he already wants to be, or it doesn't.
All right, that takes us to filter 3, the amygdala's role and emotional cost.
So, even if the chemistry between you two is completely off the charts, a man's nervous system is constantly, subconsciously tracking the emotional unpredictability of a connection. Enter the amygdala. It essentially acts as the brain's internal threat detection system. Think of it like a smoke alarm. When a relationship feels high pressure, chaotic, or just emotionally unpredictable, that amygdala fires up. And here is the truly fascinating part. When the amygdala activates, the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for long-term planning, literally shuts down. He doesn't move toward commitment in that state. His brain triggers a desire for protection, and he pulls away. Now, to be clear, this is not about hiding your emotions or pretending you don't have needs. It's really about emotional rhythm. Let's compare having clear standards with applying heavy future-framing pressure. A dream woman has clear standards that make the connection feel safe, not chaotic. For example, demanding a detailed, step-by-step roadmap of a relationship's future before you've even built a foundation of safety, that feels like heavy pressure. And pressure delivered before safety is established will always trigger hesitation in the brain. Honestly, delivering the right message but with the wrong timing can absolutely cost you the right partner. Finally, we arrive at filter 4, the power of detachment and outcome independence, because emotional regulation is really the ultimate deciding factor in long-term selection. So the crucial point is this: the woman who cares less often gets chosen more. Now, let's be very, very precise here. This absolutely does not mean playing cold games, suppressing your feelings, or being manipulative. No way. It simply means being less anxious about the specific outcome of the relationship. When your emotional state isn't heavily tied to a man's every single text or response, you remove a massive weight of responsibility from his shoulders. Let's look at the traits of someone who actually practices outcome independence. First, they maintain a regulated nervous system. They possess a full, vibrant life totally outside of him. They do not mentally commit to the partnership before the other person does. And most importantly, they do not collapse their entire identity into the connection. When you embody these traits, they signal to his brain that you are a source of self-contained value, rather than a suffocating source of pressure. And when you embrace this secure mindset, a really fascinating neurological shift happens. His brain literally stops registering you as a source of pressure and instead registers your presence as undeniable value. We're talking about value that isn't chasing him down, value that isn't guaranteed just because he managed to show up. It is value that is entirely self-contained. You can be warm, you can be present and engaged, but your baseline happiness, it doesn't require him to act a certain way. As we wrap up this deep dive into relationship psychology, I really want to leave you with this final, vital thought. Awareness changes nothing unless you apply it. It is incredibly easy to just passively consume this explainer, nod along to all the behavioral science, and then go right back out there and accept good enough in the real world. Please don't do that. Take these concepts, loss aversion, status elevation cues, emotional rhythm, outcome independence, and actively implement them into your own boundaries and your everyday mindset. I will leave you with this provocative question to ponder today. Are you ready to stop chasing and start attracting? By truly understanding how the male brain evaluates commitment, you take your power right back. You move from anxiety to security, and let me tell you, that is the most magnetic shift you can possibly make. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep applying these insights, and I will see you next time.